Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
For anyone who held out hope of another referendum, forget it. The people's decision, David Cameron told MPs today, must be respected. The Prime Minister said leaving the EU would mean a series of complex decisions. But he's likely to be out by the end of August himself, leaving all that to his successor. One man who clearly wants the job, Boris Johnson, has insisted it would be possible to have both access to the single market and end the free movement of people at the same time. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, has this report.
He's known for the swagger of his Commons appearances, but today David Cameron came not just humbled, but humiliated.
I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to...
Before he spoke, a newly elected Labour by-election victor had to be sworn in. Her first day tipped into politics in both main parties in turmoil.
Let me welcome the new member for Tooting to her place. Yeah. I think I'd advise her to keep her mobile phone on. She might be in the shadow cabinet by the end of the day. Mr. And I thought I was having a bad day.
David Cameron said he was setting up a unit of top civil servants to start looking at what his delivery suggested was a lengthy list of negotiations he'd gladly leave to someone else.
I think what will happen is that this new unit's got to get up and running, and it's got to go through all of the complex issues that need to be sorted out, whether about agriculture payments or borders or the situation in Northern Ireland, complex issues about which British laws need to be rewritten because they mention a lot of EU law and all the rest of it.
On the big question of Britain's overall relationship with Europe, David Cameron hinted pretty strongly that if we're to be out, he'd prefer as close a relationship as possible, staying in the single market.
One of the most important tasks for the new government will be to negotiate the best possible arrangements with the single market, and that'll be debated endlessly in this House. And there's obviously a very strong case for trying to remain in that single market in some form, but that's going to be a decision for the new government and for the Parliament.
David Cameron repeatedly acknowledged his powers had largely evaporated, minding the shop until his successor turns up. And today the Conservative 1922 Backbench Committee agreed a speeded-up timetable for that. Candidates must put in nominations by midday Thursday. MPs will then vote a week tomorrow and again at intervals until they whittle the number of candidates down to 2. If it's a short list to start with, we could have a new Prime Minister in August. Even if there's a long list of candidates, it looks like we'll be getting a new Prime Minister by the beginning of September at the very latest, a month earlier than David Cameron suggested on Friday. In the Commons, the Labour leader, distracted by a mass walkout from his shadow cabinet, slapped down his own MPs.
Our country is divided, and the country will thank neither the benches in front of me nor those behind for indulging in internal factioning manoeuvring at this time. We have...
One Labour MP shouted, "Resign!" Over his shoulder, SNP MPs mocked Labour's plight. Their parliamentary leader threatened another independence vote.
We have no intention whatsoever of seeing Scotland taken out of Europe. That would be totally democratically unacceptable. We are a European country and we will stay a European country. And if that means we have to have an independence referendum to protect Scotland's place, then so be it.
Boris Johnson wasn't in the Commons for the statement, but in his column in The Telegraph, he outlined what one supporter said was his bargaining position on Britain's relationship with the EU. He wrote, "There will continue to be access to the single market," and went on, "British people will still be able to go and work in the EU. But there would be a points-based system which would apply to EU citizens wanting to come to the UK. One of his own supporters called that ridiculous. He'll have to do better. It's a have-your-cake-and-eat-it approach.
Should Britain stay in the single market? Can we do that with a points-based immigration system?
You definitely have access.
But with a points-based immigration system?
You betcha.
Back in the Commons, opponents of Brexit vented their feelings about the campaign.
The leaders of the Brexit campaign have engendered an atmosphere where some people believe it is open season now for racism and xenophobia.
The first cabinet post the referendum was a sombre affair. There was agreement they should try to dampen some people's hopes of a second referendum. But they had little to say on what should fill the gigantic gap left in policy direction by the first one.
Garrett Gibbon.